White Swan, the four-time ghost escape artist. If you're the type who thinks they've seen every twist in the crime world, think again. Hit that subscribe button now, because this story isn't just wild, it's a warning carved into the walls of one of the most feared prisons in Eastern Europe. And it all begins on a freezing night when a runaway thief earned a nickname that would haunt investigators for years: the Ghost. The alarms at White Swan Prison had been silent for decades. Built like a concrete fortress beside the Volga River, the place had a reputation. No one escaped, no one even tried. Guards often joked that the walls weren't designed to keep inmates in, they were built to keep hope out. That changed at 2:37 a.m. on a windswept Thursday when a motion sensor in the industrial block flickered, then died. By the time the guards reached the corridor, the scene felt like the aftermath of a conjuring trick. A mangled vent cover lay on the floor. A workbench had been dragged beneath it, and one of the newest inmates, a 34-year-old burglar named Anton Markov, was gone. No blood, no tools, no footprints, just absence. Within minutes, White Swan went into full lockdown. Every gate crashed shut, every floodlight snapped on. Search teams swept the yard, the walls, the loading docks. Nothing. It was as if Markov had dissolved into the darkness. But the legend of the ghost didn't begin that night. His file, recovered later by investigators, painted the picture of a thief who never used violence, never carried weapons, and never spoke more than he had to. A quiet man with a habit of slipping out of houses undetected, even when people were sleeping meters away. His crimes were almost surgical. His arrests, however, were embarrassingly simple. He always got caught within hours. Police joked that he was an escape artist trapped in the body of a very unlucky man. Still, no one expected him to challenge White Swan. The internal investigation revealed his first bold move. He'd spent weeks studying the industrial repair schedule, memorizing the timing of ventilation rounds, and watching which guards took smoke breaks just outside the metal shop. He waited for the coldest night of the month, when even the patrol dogs were sluggish. He unscrewed a vent with a smuggled bolt he'd sharpened into a crude tool. Then he vanished into the ventilation labyrinth. What investigators didn't know was that Markov had a destination: the delivery wing. It was the only building on the property that connected the inside to the outside world. Flour bags, lumber, spare parts, and once a week, a lone truck that rolled out before sunrise. When guards finally found him, he was curled between crates of packaged linen, covered in dust and shaking from cold. He didn't resist. He didn't speak. He simply stared at the concrete floor, as if ashamed that his own brilliance had failed him yet again. He was returned to his cell, placed under 24-hour watch, and marked as a high-risk escape profile. But the truth was more complicated. Markov wasn't a hardened criminal. He was a man running from something, or someone, and every attempt to break free felt less like defiance and more like desperation. Over the next 8 months, he would make 3 more escape attempts. Each one stranger, each one bolder, and each one destined to fail. The guards thought they understood his pattern. They thought they understood him. They were wrong. Because the real mystery behind Markov wasn't how he tried to escape. It was why. And that answer began to surface the day investigators opened a sealed envelope hidden beneath the floorboards of his workshop, a letter addressed to someone the prison didn't even know existed. When they read the name on the envelope, everything changed. The letter found beneath the workshop floorboards wasn't long, but it shifted the entire investigation off its axis. It was written in tight, hurried strokes, the ink smudged in places as if the writer's hands were trembling. At the top, one name was repeated 3 times, underlined in fading pencil. To Lena. Forgive me. No one in the prison registry, court transcripts, or arrest records mentioned a Lena. No spouse. No sister. No daughter. The absence itself felt like a clue. Something personal, something hidden. And investigators were about to learn that Markov's escapes weren't just attempts at freedom, they were attempts at redemption. 2 days after the letter surfaced, Markov executed his second escape attempt. It was precise, fast, and far riskier than the first. He waited until the corridor lights flickered at shift change, using the brief moment of partial darkness to slither under a rolling meal cart pushed by 2 kitchen workers. He lay flat, pressing his cheek to cold metal, barely breathing as the rattling wheels carried him toward the northern gate. Beyond that gate sat the waste disposal truck, the only vehicle that left the grounds daily without inspection. By the time guards realized he was missing from his cell, Markov had already reached the loading bay. He sprinted across the concrete, vaulted the railing, and dove headfirst into the truck's rear compartment. It was nearly pitch black inside, filled with frozen packaging scraps and chemical fumes strong enough to sting his eyes. He buried himself in the debris, trying to steady his breath. For a moment, it seemed like he might actually make it, but he didn't know that White Swan had already upgraded its surveillance after his first attempt. When the truck rolled toward the exit checkpoint, a guard reviewing thermal footage spotted a faint humanoid silhouette hidden beneath the waist. The convoy stopped. The back doors were thrown open. Guards flooded the compartment. They found Markov gasping, dizzy, barely conscious. His face was pale, his voice hoarse. He whispered only one sentence before collapsing. "I have to get out, before he finds me." No one knew who he was. And Markov refused to say more. Not to the guards. Not to the warden. Not to the prison psychologist. When he regained consciousness, he stared at the ceiling for hours, silent and unmoving, as if he feared that speaking would bring something, or someone, closer. Then came the third attempt. This one was so absurd that investigators initially believed it was a setup, a distraction, something incomplete. Markov tried to slip beneath a snowplow. A full steel utility plow that idled near the yard gate every dawn. He scraped a trench in the snow behind it, forcing his body into a space so tight he could barely exhale. His plan was simple: cling to the undercarriage until the plow drove out of the facility. Then roll into the roadside forest before anyone noticed. For nearly 8 minutes he held on. But the engine's heat activated a sensor mounted underneath, a sensor no inmate ever knew existed. Guards dragged him out shivering, covered in frost and oil, his fingers stiff and bleeding from gripping frozen metal. This time he didn't fight. He didn't resist. He didn't even look angry. He looked terrified. And when the guards brought him back inside, he wasn't alone. A civilian investigator from the regional bureau had been called in, a woman named Lena known for her methodical, ice-cold approach to criminal profiling. She studied him quietly as he sat on the metal bench, his breaths shallow. "And," she said, 3 escapes in 6 months. Each more reckless than the last. You don't strike me as reckless. You strike me as a man being hunted." His eyes twitched. His jaw tightened. Rashkova leaned forward. "Who is he?" Markov swallowed hard. His cracked lips parted just enough for a whisper. "He's coming. And if he reaches this place, it won't be me who pays." Before she could ask more, an alarm rang out, a siren not heard in decades. One that signaled a breach from outside the prison. The cameras showed a figure approaching the outer fence. Not running. Not hiding. Just walking. Deliberate. Focused. Unafraid. And when the searchlights hit his face, every guard froze. Because somehow, impossibly, Markov recognized him first. His voice cracked into a panic the prison had never seen. "No. No, it's him. Don't let him in. Don't let him in." Rashkova turned sharply toward him. "Who is that man?" Markov's answer sent a chill through every person in the room. "He's the reason I became the ghost. And if he gets inside, none of us leave alive." The man at the fence didn't shout. Didn't demand entry. Didn't even acknowledge the armed guards forming a semicircle around the perimeter. He simply stood there, his coat snapping in the icy wind, his hands buried in his pockets as if he were waiting for someone to invite him inside. His presence alone felt wrong. Unnatural. Not in a supernatural sense, but in the way a predator standing in the open feels wrong. Confident. Certain that everything in his line of sight already belonged to him. Inside the security room, Anton Markov's composure shattered. He backed into the wall, trembling so violently the cameras shook with every flinch. Investigator Rashkova moved toward him, her voice firm but urgent. Who is he, Anton? Tell me now. Markov pressed his palms over his face, then whispered through his fingers. My brother. A ripple of disbelief moved through the control room. Markov had no recorded siblings. No next of kin. Nothing in his files suggested he even had living family. He's not legal. No records, Markov stammered. We grew up in places no one documented. When I got arrested, he blamed me for ruining everything. Roshkova narrowed her eyes. Everything like what? Markov slowly lowered his hands. In his eyes was a fear deeper than prison, deeper than failure. He runs a crew. Smuggling. Extortion. He wanted me involved, always. I refused. So I stole from him. Not money. Not goods. His voice cracked. I stole someone. The room fell silent. Roshkova leaned closer. Lena. Markov nodded, tears welling for the first time. His daughter. I hid her. Raised her like my own. She never knew who he was. When he found out, he came for both of us. I surrendered myself to the police to get her protected. I thought prison was the one place he couldn't reach me. His breathing grew uneven, panicked. But he found me anyway. Outside, the unknown man began pacing the fence line, studying every angle of the wall with the calm calculation of someone inspecting a property he fully intended to enter. Guards readied rifles. Floodlights followed his every step. But he never flinched. Roshkova grabbed the radio. Warden, lock down the inner yard. Bring him in for interrogation. Before the order could be completed, the man stopped, lifted his chin, and spoke just loudly enough for the nearby gate microphones to catch his words. I just want my family back. His voice was steady, cold, and purposeful. And you, he continued, staring straight at the nearest security camera, have one of them. He wasn't talking about Markov. He was talking about Lena. Roshkova felt her stomach drop. Anton, she whispered, where is she? Markov's expression twisted in agony. I don't know. The handlers who took her into protective custody never told me. They said it was safer if I didn't know. But he thinks I do. He thinks she's somewhere connected to me. That's why he keeps coming. The man outside suddenly reached into his coat. Dozens of rifles snapped upward. Fingers tightened on triggers. He pulled out a folded piece of paper. He placed it against the fence. Wind fought to tear it away, but he held it there, waiting. A guard, trembling, retrieved it with a long metal hook and rushed it to Roshkova. Inside the control room, she unfolded the paper. It was a drawing. A child's drawing. A little girl with blonde hair holding the hand of a tall man. Not Anton, but the stranger outside the fence. Above them, written in shaky handwriting. Papa, please find me. Markov collapsed to his knees. No, she wouldn't have drawn that for him. She hates him. She was terrified of him. Roshkova's voice grew tight. This means he's already reached someone in her protection chain. And then the thought hit everyone at once. Lena had been found. Then Markov's hunter wasn't here for Anton. He was here to silence the last person who could expose him. Roshkova spun toward the guards. Move him to the secure block. Now. But it was too late. The lights in the facility flickered. Then went completely dark. A single emergency spotlight snapped on, illuminating the yard through static. The stranger was no longer at the fence. He was inside the prison yard. And standing just meters from the main entrance. Markov choked on his breath, whispering through sheer terror. He got in like a ghost. The guards scrambled. Gates slammed shut. Security protocols roared to life. But the stranger remained still, hands at his sides, as if he already knew the ending. Roshkova stepped forward, her voice sharp. What do you want? He lifted his head. To finish what he started. He pointed toward the security room, toward Anton. The guards raised their weapons, shouting commands. But the stranger simply smiled. I don't need to get to him, he said quietly. I already got what I came for. Roshkova's confusion lasted only a second before a radio crackled to life behind her. A trembling voice whispered, Investigator, we've lost contact with Lena's safe house. The room went silent. Markov let out a raw, broken sound, a mixture of grief and fury. And the stranger, still calm, still waiting in the spotlight, delivered the final blow. You called him the ghost. But you never understood. I taught him everything he knows. Then he raised his hands slowly, surrendering, almost peacefully, as guards swarmed him. Markov sank to the floor, whispering one name again and again. Lena, Lena. Outside, dawn began to rise over White Swan, painting the prison walls in pale blue light. For the first time in its history, the prison had captured every escape attempt, but failed to stop the one that mattered. And as Rashkova watched the stranger being led away, she knew the nightmare wasn't over. If you thought this story was intense, the next one will push you even deeper into the darkness. Stay close. More investigations await.